But what I basically do is I take people through an experience of having their ultimate fantasies lived out in a way that's really safe and consensual and helps them feel fully expressed. So very simple.
Now I'm wondering where my misalignments are. You got me thinking about it.
I mean, I'm happy to give you a spanking and see if that could get you straightened out.
Welcome back to the Digital Social Hour, guys. I'm your host, Sean Kelly. Got a fabulous guest for you guys today, Kimi Inch.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm excited to be here in Vegas and all dolled up for you.
Yeah, I love your outfit.
Thank you. Yeah, I just thought I'd do a little Dominatrix glam for the show today.
So you call yourself a Dominatrix. For those that don't know what that is, how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I talk about being a dominatrix, sometimes there's some ideas in people's heads that it looks like a woman who's abusing men and is a professional but what I basically do is I take people through an experience of having their ultimate fantasies lived out in a way that's really safe and consensual and helps them feel fully expressed. So very similar to how therapists create a safe container for people to express themselves. I do that in an erotic sense.
And how were you able to develop these skills? Because that feels like something very, I don't know how to describe it.
They don't have this class in school for sure, right? I used to be a DJ back in the early 2000s, and I was living in Tokyo, and I was invited to DJ at fetish parties. And before then, I had no knowledge of what kink or BDSM was. I thought it was whips and chains and things that people do in the Midwest when they're bored. And what I had discovered by DJing at these fetish parties was that it was really this imaginative, creative, erotic space where people can live out their biggest desires. And I started meeting people affiliated with that lifestyle. I started meeting professional dominatrixes who took me under their wing. Initially, they were like, come sit in the corner and get paid to watch our sessions because customers like to have a voyeur and they want to have an audience. And that's what I would do. I would sit in the corner and watch these sessions while my mind is getting absolutely blown. And I was just so curious about why do we have the fantasies we have? Why do we have the turn-ons that we have? Essentially, I became a dominatrix myself and started to do this work and realized that, wow, there's so much more to this than just a spank and a tickle. It's actually really deep, healing, expansive work. So it became so much more than I could ever imagine.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into that. But first of all, what is a fetish party?
Right. So essentially, a fetish party is an event where people can get dressed up and can be with like-minded pleasure seekers to enact some of their fantasies and to sort of play and have fun and to explore erotically in that space.
Oh, so those people that are furries, is that one of those?
Furries might be there. Absolutely. I mean, you would be surprised. It's a mix and match of a lot of different people. It could be people there that are doms or subs and just wanting to explore power dynamics. And then there could be more specific thing like people who want to worship feet. And then there could be furries and there could be all types of specifics. But essentially it's people who are available and open to playing and exploring in an erotic way.
Is it possible for a straight guy to be a sub?
Oh my gosh, it's possible. And it's actually really interesting because most of the men that have been submissive to me have been some of the most powerful men on this world. It's been politicians, it's been Fortune 500 company owners, it's been, professors. I mean, you name it, it's been a mix of different kinds of people. But essentially, a lot of the submissive men that I've worked with in the past have such a weight of responsibility of power in their lives that this is an opportunity for them to relinquish that responsibility, and it actually creates harmony and balance in their life. That tends to be very dominant. It's a place where they get to let go and surrender all of that.
That's interesting, yeah, because on the show Billions, one of the lawyers is like a sub.
Yes, and that's interesting because in the media, there's a lot of depiction of that world, and his stuff is pretty hardcore, and the woman just sort of comes in and beats the out of him and leaves, and that's usually how kink and BDSM is depicted through the media, but it's really not a fair depiction of what it really is, because there's a lot of depth and intimacy and connection that happens in these spaces.
So what exactly is BDSM? What does that stand for?
If you want to break it down within the word itself, the B and D stands for bondage and discipline. The S&M in the middle stands for domination, submission. And the S&M on the end stands for sadism and masochism. So within those 6 words.
Shout out to Policy Genius, today's sponsor. The holidays not only allow us to spend time with family, but they are a reminder of how important our responsibility is to protect them. That includes planning to secure their future. Life insurance is an easy way to give your family peace of mind, provides a safety net, so if something were to happen to you, your family can cover expenses while getting back on their feet. Luckily, Policy Genius can help you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts are on hand to talk you through it. You never know when you'll need life insurance. I've lost some loved ones over the past few years, and unfortunately, none of them had life insurance. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Even if you already have a policy through work, it may not offer enough protection. So check out Policy Genius. Your family deserves peace of mind. Head to policygenius.com/DSH or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/DSH.
Basically, any roles or activities that encompass those 6 words is BDSM. Okay. So things like domination and submission is a very powerful and common aspect of BDSM, where you're playing with power dynamics. And I tell people, like, even if you don't think you're into kink yourself, the themes within kink and BDSM are universal. So the universal themes are pleasure, pain, power, surrender, and all of these things that we experience in our day-to-day lives. So this is just making those things conscious and playing them out in a consensual, creative way.
Interesting. Is there a level of kink or BDSM that is too much for you that you just won't go to?
I have my limits. Yeah, I have my limits. I'm not a free-for-all for sure. You know, there are certain avenues that I prefer to explore in, but I've had some very, I won't say weird, but it's unusual requests. And it doesn't always fall within the limits that I set for myself. So I don't just do anything, but if somebody is interested in playing in a certain way, I'll hopefully be able to recommend or refer them to somebody else that might be able to accommodate that. But I was in Japan, and there are some really interesting imaginative scenarios that I encountered while living in Japan.
I've seen some interesting kinks. I've seen people that like to be pooped on, peed on,
golden showers,
farted on, all this weird, not weird, but like interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I like to say weird, wonderful, and wicked sort of things that I've encountered in these explorations. But more often, people are really looking to sort of take a break from their regular lives. Like they want to take a break from their 9-to-5 personalities and want to step into something so completely different and allow different parts of themselves to be expressed that don't always get an opportunity to shine.
Yeah. So walk me through the process. Let's say a patient comes to you. What's the first thing you do? What do you ask them? And then where do you go from there?
Right. So, the work that I'm doing goes beyond dominatrix work. I like to say that I also am a motivational spanker, and I like to do somatic therapy work. I'm a therapist as well. And when people are coming to see me, they're coming to see me for so many different reasons. It might be because they want to explore and they're curious. It might be because they are having some addiction issues around. It might be around shame and guilt. So depending on what they want to work on, they can reach out to me, and we can start a process of really kind of tearing apart and diving deeper into what's going on in their lives. Because what people tend to think about, it's interesting. People tend to focus on personal development, but they don't tend to focus on their erotic selves, which is essentially the essence and depth and core of who we are as people. People are going to, Tony Robbins conferences and, listening to Joe Dispenza, but they're not actually putting in the effort and energy of understanding their own erotic selves for whatever reason, maybe culturally, maybe it's religion, all of these sort of things. But essentially, when we start getting into healthy alignment with ourselves, it ripples into all aspects of our lives. So when people are willing to work on that part of their lives, it really affects them in a bigger way in every aspect of their life.
So how can people reach that healthy alignment with their you talk about a lot about erotic energy, right?
Right.
How do people know if they're even struggling, I guess, with their energies?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, and intimacy, I mean, these are things that people are already engaging with. But a lot of the people that I'm working with have a sense that there's something more for them here. For those who have had sex education, which, you know, some people haven't even had sex education if you're from Texas, for example, that's really lacking. But sex education tends to focus around don't get pregnant, don't get STDs, right? It doesn't talk about how to understand your own desires better, how to understand what your boundaries are, how to ask for what you want so you can have the pleasure that you want.
Right.
In fact, when people think about erotic pleasure, they think of it as a self-indulgence almost. Instead of that, this is a part of my biology and that my erotic energy is a part of my life force energy. And if I'm able to really attune to that part of myself, I'm able to even biohack it in a sense that I can create more creativity for myself, more vitality, more powerful and meaningful relationships with other people. And it just shows up in all aspects of our lives, essentially.
What are your thoughts on, because some people are super against it.
Right.
Some people promote it. Are you somewhere in the middle?
So my interest is more around intention of the self-pleasuring act, you know, like so often, you know, you can take your and rub your hand up and down it for a couple minutes and have an and fall asleep. And that can be the extent of what that practice looks like. Or you can actually have a really conscious, really embodied experience of what could look like, where it could even include things like manifestation practices, where you're manifesting wealth and an abundance and things like that. And also thinking about it beyond just the physical act, but also feeling into how does this relate to more of my life?
Wow.
Like can I expand on this pleasure? Like it's interesting when you think about women, you know, the women are lighting the candles and, you know, this putting on sexy music and having this whole experience while you think about men and it's like just rubbing one out before they can go to work, you know, so they're just kind of clearing the pipes, so to speak. So my interest is more around the intention. If you're doing it in an act of getting more self-connected and embodied within yourself, then that can create more of what you want in the world, as opposed to just using it as a way of, you know, getting to sleep or to cope in the world. If you're using it as a coping mechanism, for example, that's not going to really serve you. Interesting.
Yeah, I never thought about manifestation or meditating during it, but it's
all about the magic, you know. You know, I study a lot of tantra, and
what's tantra?
And tantra is essentially what it actually means as a definition is weaving and looming all aspects of life. And there's a really big part of tantra called neo tantra, and that's, you know, a lot of people when they hear tantra, they think about Sting having these like, you know, 24-hour sessions and not having to, but still having multiple. And people get really curious around like, oh, I can have multiple or without a. I mean, does that interest you, Sean? You know, like
does sound very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And how to access our bodies and our energy within our bodies so that we can have more expansive pleasure in our lives. Most people think about sex as this, you know, sort of insert slot A into slot B and have some friction and then have. And so it's really genitally focused, but sex can be really emotional. It can be really mental. You know, I can be speaking to someone on the phone who's not even in the same state or in the same country with me, and they could have, you know, extreme turn on and arousal just through the power of my voice. Wow. And when we start using more of our capacity for pleasure, then we can actually start tapping into what the secrets and the mysteries of the universe are.
Interesting. So you've engaged in phone before?
Oh, that was actually one of my first jobs out of high school.
Yeah?
Yeah, I actually signed up to be on a psychic network.
Yeah.
And they liked the sound of my voice and they're like, we actually have a phone line. Would you like to do that? And I'm 18 years old. I've had like one partner my whole life. What the do I know about at that age? But I didn't really need to know a lot about because it's all about asking questions and getting curious about what the caller wanted to talk about and wanted to share and getting really curious around like, oh, tell me more. That sounds hot. Like, I want to hear what else do you have and what does she look like and what do you imagine doing to me? And then, oh, how do I build on that? So using erotic language can be super, super powerful. It's something I love teaching people because turning people on in their minds goes well beyond just turning them on in their bodies.
Yeah. And women are they read those books, right?
Yes, they're very aural, not
Aural.
oral, but aural.
What's aural?
Aural is using, through the ears, through sound, through speaking, being able to tap into somebody's body. Because listen, at the end of the day, anyone can like spank you or tie you up and do all these sort of kinky activities with you. But if you get in someone's head, you get in someone's heart, that's really where the comes from. That's makes you an extraordinary lover, not just someone who's competent. Like a lot of the time people are having this sort of vanilla and let me just clarify, vanilla isn't necessarily the absence of kink, it's just sort of this functional. Like I'm going to have genitally focused interactions that are going to result in a nothing wrong with that. That's super pleasurable and that can be fun sometimes. However, it doesn't also give a lot of space for exploration and understanding yourself in deeper ways or understanding your partner in deeper ways. So you have an option to say like, hey, instead of this vanilla life, what else is there? Like what is possible when I share with you my deepest, most secret fantasies? And what happens if you not only accept me for who I am, but you celebrate me for who I am? Like flowers, like candy. Like I think that's the most romantic thing you can do for someone is like say, tell me all your desires and I want to accept you in it and I want to meet you there. Like I would love to help you experience something that feels so vulnerable and things that you don't share with anyone else that I want to have that closeness with you.
So you really like to connect with people spiritually, not just physically, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole human experience goes beyond the mental aspect, but also the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual as well. And I think is one of those, most miraculous things that we can experience as human beings. And I feel like we're using it like fast food.
Pretty much everyone
like,
I know.
Oh, I'm really hungry. I'm going to run to In-N-Out Burger and get something to eat and quiet that hunger. And don't get me wrong, I love In-N-Out Burger every once in a while, but I don't want to live off of In-N-Out Burger.
I'd get sick of it.
Right? I want the 7-course meal every once in a while. I want the gourmet experience. And that's what our erotic lives can look like if we're willing to go beyond kind of what we're shown in the media as this just generally focused interaction and we actually start diving deeper into what's possible.
Yeah. So you've mentioned spanking a few times now.
I love spanking.
So what goes into a good spank? Because people just think of it as a hit, but is there more to it?
Absolutely. So, what I love, and it's not just spanking, but it's all aspects of sex and eroticism, is how do we dive deeper into something? How do we go beneath the surface of things? So when people think about spanking, they think of it as this like, consensual, erotic punishment that two adults can share, right? And it could also be a way of sort of asserting dominance over another person. And there's ways that you can use it in that sense. But if I were going to use it as a biohack and even a tantric sense, I would be using it to stimulate and move energy in my partner's body. So when I'm spanking the buttocks, because of the close proximity the buttocks has to the genitals, I'm bringing energy to that area. I'm bringing blood to that area. So that's creating more sensitivity near the genitals. It's bringing energy from the head into the body. And I could also say in a tantric sense, like in the chakra systems, I could say our butts is our first chakras, and our chakras, our first chakra is linked to wealth and abundance, security, safety, trust. So I could tell my partner, like, when I'm spanking you, I'm doing it through my 4th chakra, which is through my heart, into my arms, into my hands. I'm spanking you with my heart, and I'm activating the part of you that I want to create more wealth and abundance and safety in.
Wow.
And I can be saying to them, like, I don't always have to use this as a punishment, but if I were to spank you, for example, Sean, and I was going to say, I am going to punish you. Do you know why I'm going to punish you, Sean?
Why?
I'm going to punish you for all the times that you stood in the way of your own happiness. I'm going to actually punish you for all the times you didn't think you were the most amazing person on this planet just because you're alive, not for what you do, but because you breathe. I'm going to punish you for any time that you don't actually give yourself the love that you deserve. And you're seeing, like, as I'm slapping my own hand right now, what I'm doing is that I'm putting in information that my partner is receiving in this like really open, vulnerable way. And I'm also sort of creating this visceral physical experience of them having an impact while I'm saying these positive words that's helping them open up into deeper places of hypnosis so that they can accept this language in a really loving, supportive way, that they can actually start feeling the own love that they have for themselves. So that goes well beyond punishing for doing the dishes wrong. Like, how boring, right? Like, you know, when people are so boring in some of the ways that they're playing, and it's actually like, how about instead of punishing me for doing the dishes wrong, you punish me for the times that I don't think I'm the most beautiful woman in the world. And that you're actually trying to help me reconnect to myself again.
Wow. Spanking therapy.
Right?
Who would have thought, man?
It's true. Yeah. The body's fun. And you know, you could do breath work, and you can do yoga, and you can do all different kinds of things, or you can, you know, get tied up and get spanked. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. But I just think this is more fun.
Yeah. So walk me through the chakras, because that's something that's not taught at all.
Yeah.
Like, how many are there, and what do they do?
So sure. So in Tantra, we talk about 7 chakras that are power centers within the body, and they're linked to not just different places in the body, but they're linked to different attributes. So like I said, the first chakra would be essentially our perineum in our area, and that represents wealth and abundance and money and things of that nature. The second chakra is our genitals, and that's related to sexuality, of course, emotions, and creativity, which is interesting because, you know, a lot of clients that I work with are very successful, powerful people that want to tap into greater creativity. So I always get interested in getting them more connected with their sexuality. That tends to feed into their creativity.
Wow. So getting laid more helps them with business?
You know, it can be, as long as, again, the intention behind, you know, it's not just this sort of like one-off coping mechanism. It's this really full-bodied, sort of conscious, connected sort of experiences that really kind of ignite the creative centers.
Wow.
The third chakra is in our stomach, and that's related to identity and to our intuition. Our fourth chakra is in our heart, and that's around, you know, emotions and our longing and things of that nature. Our throat is our fifth chakra, which is about expression. Our sixth is our third eye, and that's all about vision. And our seventh is our crown, and that's connection to source or our spirituality, essentially. So the idea in the tantric sense, which is an ancient wisdom that's been around for thousands and thousands of years, is that when these power centers are in alignment, then you are able to sort of navigate and move through the world any way you want. You can attract anything you want. You can have the success you want. You're able to just flow with life with ease.
Now I'm wondering where my misalignments are. You got me thinking about it.
I mean, I'm happy to give you a spanking and see if that could get you straightened out. No. I'm only interested in playing with people who are a yes to all of that.
Man, so how do you take everything you know and apply it in your personal and your dating life? Yeah,
well, it's interesting because, okay, so there's this term called pervertibles. So what pervertibles means is, like, you can go in the kitchen and you could find something that you can use as a toy or as a play toy. Like you could go into your kitchen, right? And you could pull open the drawer and pull out a spatula, and you could spank someone with a spatula.
Okay.
Right. You can use, I'm like looking around this space. You can use almost anything to pervert and use it in a or erotic way. So if you think of it on that sort of material world aspect, if you were to go beyond that and extend that even bigger, how do you pervert life? Like, I'm a big pervert, and let me explain. Like, I'm all about being consensual and respectful of other people's space, but I can pervert almost any scenario. So if I'm looking at a part of my life that's not feeling like it's really in alignment, or I don't feel like it's really serving me, I get really curious. People, it's interesting. People get really sketchy around this idea of power dynamics. Like, people are like, oh, I would never, a lot of guys especially, I would never submit to a woman. I would never do that. You know, the idea of it's so emasculating and so disgusting for them, which is interesting because they want their girlfriends to submit to them. So I always get curious around, like, well, that's interesting. You have a judgment around being submissive, but where are you submissive in your life? Because most of the time people are submissive to the idea of being comfortable, of having security. People will sell their souls and work at a job they hate for years to have that security, that financial security, because they're so afraid of what's going to happen if they're uncomfortable. And it's almost like you become a slave. You become submissive unconsensually and unconsciously to a scenario. So I get curious around, like, where am I being unconsensually a slave to something or submissive to something? Like, where am I being sadistic? Like, it's funny. People sometimes will ask me like to do these sessions and scenes with them where they want me to humiliate them. And I let them know like, listen, I'm happy to engage in this scene with you as long as we're doing it in a conscious, consensual way.
Yeah.
But I bet I could never say the things to you that you say to yourself that are going to be as hurtful. Because what we say to ourselves in our own mind are always going to be like the worst things you can possibly think of.
That's deep.
Yeah, it's true. When people don't actually realize like how they're already in, like power dynamics are happening all the time. So when I'm perverting life, when I'm perverting the spaces around me, when I'm looking at it through this lens, I can see like where's the power dynamic here, and where am I in that power dynamic. It's not a bad thing to be in the submissive role if it's something that I'm really committed to, because being submissive and being in surrender is actually the most powerful place you can be in.
Wow.
And it's interesting, I talk about dominance and submission in the work that I do, but the terminology I like to use more is leader and follower. So, when we think about partner dancing like salsa and tango, there's always a leader and there's always a follower. So you can think of sex or like an erotic encounter as a dance. And when you think of somebody being a leader and a follower, both can be masterful and both are needed to create the dance.
Wow.
So think about being an erotic leader. Like, how can I be an erotic leader where I can lead my partner through an expansive experience that their minds are getting blown open and their hearts are getting blown open? And then how can I translate that into the boardroom? How can I bring that creativity, that presence, that authenticity? And how can I bring that into the work that I'm doing so that I'm also blowing the minds and hearts of the people around me that are outside of the bedroom? So I'm thinking about life in those terms, like that go well beyond just what I'm doing in the bedroom, but how I can bring all of that into the world as well.
Wow. I didn't realize it got that deep and applied to all facets
yes,
of life.
Darling. Yes, that's what I'm here to talk about. It goes real deep.
Because people think of dominatrix and they assume bedroom.
Sure, of course. Dungeon, bedroom. And that's cool. Like we're doing some interesting things in the bedroom. I bet everyone here has the story, that they have, but it's like, okay, how do we actually expand beyond this? Because most time everyone's just playing in this middle school, like very surfacey, very small kind of way. And there's actually so much more that's available to us. So instead of meditation, instead of breath work, instead of ayahuasca, instead of MDMA journeys, think about the source of your eroticism as being that expansive and that life-changing, because your pleasure hormones that are released when you're engaged in really sort of deep erotic acts is the same sort of pleasure hormones that get released when you're doing MDMA.
Wow.
So you don't actually have to take anything outside of yourself to have an expansive experience like MDMA.
Really?
And it's just a reminder, absolutely. And it's just a reminder that we actually don't need anything outside of ourselves to have the fullness of what's possible. Like, we actually don't need anything, and we are enough just being who we are. So if you start to think about and the access of pleasure through being our birthright, that you could either experience alone or with a partner, I think it's fun with a partner, you start to see like, oh, wow, the powers that be don't want me to know this. They don't want me to actually know that I have everything I need all within myself. They want me to think that I need something outside of myself. And they want to actually teach men and women about through that is a really poor source of education, because none of that's real. So if that's how people are learning about is not actually understanding the depth and intimacy and connection that they actually truly long for. Yeah,
it's terrible. I had to stop watching it like a year ago.
It can be really addictive, and it does things to the brain as well.
Yeah,
and
it started affecting my own relationship almost. So.
Yeah, that's great that you were aware and conscious of it and did something about it, because the real thing is so much better.
Yeah, for sure. So have you ever had a experience that was so good you had an out-of-body experience?
Absolutely. I mean, I've had multiple, and there was no involved.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did that happen?
So, well, I love having an experience where there's a lot of talk. I'm a sapiosexual. I don't know if you've heard that term before.
I have. I think I am too, but I never took a test. So
in order to get turned on, I need more than just a pretty face.
Yeah.
I need someone that I feel like is intelligent on some level, that has intelligence and depth and insight. And so I need to have that. And when that's present, whether the person's in the room with me or not, if they're able to, you know, speak to me in a way that gets me really turned on and talk to me with confidence and presence and creativity. Oh my gosh, like the floodgates just open and anything is possible. You've won me over without even having to touch me, because you've already touched me with your words. You've already like penetrated me with your like words and essence, you know what I mean? So that sort of like makes me so, and like it makes me have not just in my genitals, but in my eyelashes.
Just from words?
In my toenails. Oh, what? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had extended that have gone on for hours where I just like this vibration. And so when people think about it's, there's different levels of intensity that an orgasm can look like. And it can be anything from like, you know, sort of these body waves that just kind of feel like the sense of aliveness within you. And it can be that like roll your eyes in the back of the head, you lose all concept of time and you're completely out of your head and you're in this completely different place where time stands still. Yeah. So it can vary in degrees, but yeah, absolutely. That sort of energy can continue to roll. Wow. And be ongoing, not just for women, but for men. Yeah, that's powerful. Using the senses to stimulate them and to manipulate them can be really fun. And I've used binary beats and things of that nature to enhance an experience with somebody. So yeah, you can use all kinds of tricks and tips. But I want to tell you, you know, you don't actually need any of those toys. Like all you really need is, you know, your hands, your heart, and your head. Like that is all you need to create the most mind-blowing experience for your partner. Wow. What are some messages you want to leave this world with? I think it's really important for people to remember that you don't have to do this life alone. And when it comes to your erotic journey, a lot of people are waiting for the perfect partner in order to start exploring this side of themselves. And I'm here to say, like, don't wait. Like, this is actually a really personal experience that can have so much fulfillment and so much illumination when you're able to just begin that process on your own. So I tell people, like, don't wait and don't feel that you have to do this alone. There's other resources. There's other, not only coaches and mentors, but there's other people on this journey as well that want to support you. And it's actually really cool. I do these play parties where people are coming to actually explore their ultimate fantasies, and they're doing it in this group setting that is actually like really supportive and again, celebratory. I had this couple who came in, and the man wanted to give his wife the experience of having her ultimate fantasy, which it was being a stripper. So we did this whole thing. He passed out $100 bills. He had like $10,000 of $100 bills, and he was passing out all this money. And we set up this scenario where, like, Crystal, you're on next, like, come to the stage. And, you know, she was like, what's going on? And we're playing her music, and she started stripping in front of everybody. And then we started throwing money at her, and she realized it was $100 bills, and it's like $10,000 flying in the air. So all the women started dancing and stripping, and everybody started dancing and stripping and rolling in the money. And what she had described to me after that was like, I had always wanted to have that fantasy come to life. And that was the very first time I felt the most beautiful I've ever felt in my life, that I felt the most seen, the most accepted. And it was just as simple as being daring enough to speak aloud like what you've always wanted to try erotically, and having the support of not only your partner, but the whole community wanting you to live that out in real life. And that completely healed a part of her that she had never even been able to touch before. Wow. So it's really incredible what this work can do when you're willing to kind of go there and go deep. Love it. Where can people find you? So you can find me at andmorepresents.com, and then I'm in social media under my name at Kimi Inch, and you can find me on TikTok, on Instagram, Facebook, all of those things. And there we go. I'd love to blow your hearts and minds open as well. Thanks for coming on, Kimi. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys tomorrow.